Hello everybody and welcome to Dot to Dot. Today I'm going to talk about the secret destination that has been brought up in the last episode of Oak Island. And also I'm going to talk about the two ship logs that we have information about. And we're going to look at some of the historical background of the Aurora and the Castor. These are two ships that were on a secret destination, or at least they're on a mission with a secret destination. So let's go to a little presentation. Now these two ships, the Aurora and the Castor, were involved in the 1746 invasion of Louisbourg. They were going to take back the fort at Louisbourg in Nova Scotia. And really the whole extent of the mission was they were going to sail down and render Boston in flames. So it was quite an ambitious mission, and it ended up in big failure. Now the head of this mission was this gentleman right here, who was a Rochefoucauld. And, you know, we know that the Rochefoucauld, Francois Rochefoucauld, is mentioned on the Zena Halper map, which is connected to the vault theory, which Olivier and I have been working on for the last couple of years. Now, whether or not he is part of the involvement or knew something from history, or he had something and that map is connected to him and this invasion, we don't know. But we're going to look into some history here. And this is basically telling you about the invasion. One of the notable points is that the Duc d'Anville was pretty much not a very trained or experienced admiral. I mean, he had Navy experience, but certainly not as much as some of the captains that were underneath him in this invasion. One of them, you'll see in a minute, he was from a family of admirals and captains, so he was not very well experienced. And this was the biggest invasion of ships basically prior to the Revolutionary War. So it was a huge undertaking, and they met with many difficulties, two storms, some doldrums, I believe, near the Azores. Really slowed them down. I can't imagine the logistics in such an invasion. And it took them, lasted about 86 days, which is about probably a whole month more than it should have. Now they arrive in Halifax. They start to arrive in Halifax. That means that the first of the invasion fleet starts to arrive on September 10th. And they keep trickling in. I think I even read that there was one that didn't get there till September 19th. When did the Duc d'Anville get there? Well, it says that he fell ill 6 days after his arrival, and he died on the 27th. Now, how long was he sick? We don't know. So I don't really know when he got there, but it was most likely after the 10th. Now, there was one boat that was with the fleet that arrived earlier, and a lot earlier, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But here's the ship log, and this is talking about the Aurora and the Castor and the secret destination. Now, this destination was to be taken up on the March 1st through the 10th. So this is a note that's basically saying that they need some more men and supplies, and it talks about Chevalier de Camely, which was the port commander at Brest, France. And it talks about the other two captains, which is Captain du Venant and also Chevalier Lieutenant de Soleil. And it doesn't say Chevalier Lieutenant de Soleil in this. It is in the information that I found later that gives his rank and everything like that. But yes, the destination is unknown, and it is a whole month prior to them leaving for Nova Scotia. So this destination isn't Nova Scotia. It's nowhere in Nova Scotia. It is in probably on the mainland of France. Or it could be that they were supposed to leave on March 1st through the 10th and they ended up not leaving till April. That's a good possibility also. Well, I put this guy in here because he's the only one on that note that I could find information on. And the interesting fact about this is he was a chevalier, which basically talks about it's being a knight, so it's an award that you get. And he was also affiliated with the Order of Malta, which we know is the order that the Knights Hospitaller came from. So this guy was basically a Knights Hospitaller through the Order of Malta. So this is where I'm getting my information about the Aurore and L'Castor. This is a book by James Pritchard. He's a very recognized Canadian historian, especially with nautical research. And so it's a pretty good source, I think. So this is the account of the Aurore and L'Castor. And they sailed from Brest on their mission as a scouting mission towards Nova Scotia on April 9th. And then on April 11th, the two captains communicate, set their course for the Grand Bank of south of Newfoundland. Now, this is interesting. On the way, they run into a English ship that was bound to Barbados from Plymouth, England. And they also evaded a whole other force of 12 ships and 4 naval escorts. And they ended up looting this boat and taking prisoners. So on May 12th, they also ran into another boat a whole month later, and they were probably closer to Newfoundland. And they ran into a codfish boat that had a bunch of codfish, and it also had some cargo in it, and they ended up sinking the ship and the crew because they couldn't take on any more prisoners. It's the tragedies of war. So anyway, they reached Newfoundland, the Grand Bank, on the 30th, and they were running lows on supplies. Why, I don't know. They just ran into a codfish boat. I don't know why they're running low. And 20 their crewmen were sick. Now this is interesting because the Aurora, it reaches Halifax in mid-June, and the Castor doesn't reach Halifax until early July. So they must have separated. So they're probably separating to do patrols, and we don't know why, but this is what it says in the account. And another interesting thing is the Castor takes a British ship, a British sloop, right in Halifax Bay on the 19th of July. So we know the Castor was there in July, and we know the Aurora was there in July. And they're both awaiting the Duc d'Anville's. Now, there was a dispatch that came from the La Renommée. Now, this is the ship that was with the fleet, but it ran ahead in order to give the Castor and the Aurora this dispatch of telling the progress of the fleet. Now, when he arrives, I don't know, but I know it must be somewhere around the time the Castor gets there, because the record shows that in mid-July, the captain of the Renommée, which is Captain de Crescent, and he's very well trained, and his whole family, going back a couple of generations, were all Navy men and commanders. So he's a very, very competent commander. and he instructs the people to resupply the Castor and the Aurora. Now, these military operations are taking supplies from the local population and Indians, and apparently they really, suck them dry, because the local population starts to complain, and because they're getting low on supplies, and they don't know what they're going to do for the winter. But anyway, the other point in this book is that the summer patrols, so these boats were patrolling, and they really got enough information to give a clear idea of what the reconquest is going to look like and the challenges. Unfortunately, the intelligence didn't help them. So they waited impatiently until the end of July for D'Anville, and then they sailed to Cape Sambro, which is right around the corner from Halifax, and I'll show you in a minute. And then from Cape Sambro, they left on August 14th, and they headed back to France, where they arrived back in France on September 2nd, 3 weeks to the day. Apparently that is a world record or something, because it was noted very, remarkably that they were back in such a short amount of time. So the Aurora and the Castor are back in France on September 2nd. Now the La Renommée is still in Halifax. It's still there. And as far as I can see, I didn't see any other records of any other boats that were in Halifax during this week in September, except the La Renommée. Now, I don't know. I'm not that great of a historical researcher, but this could be the boat that we're going to talk about next. Just to give you an idea, this is Oak Island right here. Here's Halifax. Here's Cape Sambro. And this is the other ship log we're going to talk about. And September 6th. So who's there in September 6th? The only person I know is the La Renommée, which is Captain Kersaint. And it says, enter a deep bay, southwesterly of Chibucto Bay, which is Halifax Bay, and no word of D'Anville. So he's there, still waiting for D'Anville. And the weather being clear, we set sail, turning southwesterly along the coast, passing many rocky islands. And at midday we reached a deep bay, with several hundred small islands wooded to the shore. And then the wind dying down, so it must have been in the afternoon, we anchored for the night. The great quantity of treasure on this vessel makes it unwise to jeopardize it in any engagement with the enemy. So what is this treasure? What is he talking about? If this is Kersaint, if this is somebody that, is at Halifax and they're going to bury this, where did he get this treasure? Now, was it brought over by the Castor and the Aurora with their little mission prior to them leaving? Or was it something that was already a cache there in Halifax that they were just trying to hide because perhaps, there was a lot of enemy ships in the area? Certainly isn't very credible that a big operation would be going on in Oak Island during this time, because there was just so much activity. And then they talk about in September 8th, they decide they're going to do a tunnel or a pit. And then on September 13th, they start digging the pit. But my big question is, who is this talking? Now, I put this in just as a quick thing, is because this is a map that came with the, basically through Zena Halpern. And remember, it's the 1178. And it's always been mentioned that this is a later map, and I'm starting to get convinced that it probably is. But maybe this may have something to do with it. Especially the date is the 24th of June. That sort of fits into the time period that the Castor and the Aurora were there. And also the meridian, the longitude and latitude sort of fits. The Paris meridian was set up in 1740, about 2 degrees. And also the stops, the first 3 stops up here is in the Grand Bank of Newfoundland. So let's go to Google Earth here. And here's Halifax Harbor. And so the note said that they were in a bay that was southwest of Halifax Harbor, which had many islands, or they passed many rocky islands. So this could be this right here. And then you can go, they turn southwesterly and they reach another deep bay at midday. So this is, depending on when they started, this is, I think, about 18 miles. Yes, it's 18 miles. So, these boats probably traveling not at open sea, but along the shore, they're probably going, maybe 4 or 5 knots. So it would take them probably about 3 hours or so to travel down here or right here. And then at midday, they start heading in for a couple more hours, and the wind starts to die down. They hit Oak Island. It's pretty plausible. There's some credibility there that this could be the trajectory, and that this note could be very, plausible. So I got some more information here. This is an interesting thing. This guy, Pierre Morpain, he was actually the commander of the Castor prior to de Soleil taking it over for this invasion. And the Castor was actually built in 1745, and it was given to Pierre Morpain, and he had a very extensive history. He's been down in the Caribbean and the West Indies and Port Royal, but he was also involved in the defense of Louisbourg prior to the British taking it over in 1745, and he defended it there. But he was a guy that, he was attacking and looting everything. He was actually a privateer also. So did he, was he part of this treasure? We don't know, but he's a very interesting character. He was somebody who was going up and down the coast of Nova Scotia, and I believe it says in here somewhere that he was very highly successful, building a reputation, both the French authorities in New England sailing interests, and he also was so well known that the British would stop sending merchant ships when he was around. I think it is his right here. Morpain again took to the seas against the British colonial shipping. His reputation was such that reports of the activities of Morpain, he had a nickname, were sufficient to keep merchant ships in port. So, a very interesting character. So here's the La Renommée, and it is a 32 gun, I believe, Siren class. And we also have the Castor. And you can see here, I think here's where it says, see right here, it says Captain Pierre Morgan. But that was in 1745. He was already back in France. So it doesn't list de Soleil as the captain here, but he was the captain after Pierre and Morgan. And then we have the Aurora, and it was a 46 gun, pretty big boat, 129 feet. So this is, it has an account here of it being in Louisburg in 1745 also. Here it gives the captain's name. The captain's name was Captain du Fognat, and that verifies what's on the note. So, there's information. This is a great website. So that's it. That's what I have for you guys. This is interesting. This map may be part of that. We don't know. But that's all I have for today. Have a great day. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.